Welcome, Martin. Do I say that the right way? How do we pronounce your name if we want to be talking with you?
So the Danish way is Martin.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Good.
otherwise, but you just said it pretty well, so that's good.
Okay. I will keep saying that in that case.
Yeah. No
Thank
problem.
you. Thank you for joining us today. Very happy to have you here. As I mentioned to you, is that I have been secretly following you for a while now, mostly on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
just to see what you do. And I'm very interested in investing as well, which is the main topic you talk about. And because of that and the way you start, like what I saw as creating demand and sharing your messaging, I thought it would be great to have you on so you can share your message and also so other people can learn from that. And I would like to start with a quick introduction about you, what you do, what your coaching business is about, and just a quick intro.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, my name is Martin and I live here in Denmark, close to Copenhagen. And I run my own business called Invest with Martin, where I help people get into the stock market. So beginners that have some money they have ready to invest, but they don't know where or how to do it. So I run that, and I'm mostly on LinkedIn, and I'm running people on my boot camp that starts here in the beginning of August, which is an online 6 weeks course. So that's like the very short introduction of me and my business. And then, of course, the background is a bit different for me.
Okay. Yeah. Before we go into the background, I was curious, what is your personal experience with stock investing and what makes you the expert in this field, or at least for beginners, right? Because that's a very clear audience call out that you made there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I've been investing since 2009, 2010-ish, and I experienced the financial crisis quite close, as my mom worked in a bank at that point that had to close down because of the financial crisis. And I was 18 at the time. So I understood what was happening. And instead of frightening me, it got me interested actually into the stock market because, okay, you can actually, some people are making money on this and some people are taking advantage and seeing it as an opportunity at that point, right? And so I think from that point on, I started investing, and then I've been investing ever since. And then that interest grew into a passion that then led me to quit my job last year and then pursue this. So the goal is to help people. For example, we just had the COVID crash 2.5 years ago, and now we're looking to get into another one. And that's just, it takes me back to that experience from the financial crisis because it hit the family, it hit everyone. And so trying to help people through that. And how can you build like a long-term good portfolio that will take you through 20, 25, 30 years, how many years you want to be in with all these crashes and downturns as well, because that's where people lose most of their money, right? Because it crashes and then they sell.
Yeah. It's the financial, like the anxiety that people get because they're investing probably too much of their money, so they don't have enough when they lose their job, and then they need to panic sell. Yeah, it's an interesting rat race to be in if you make these decisions. Like,
yeah, and I think also for many people, they at the end of the day they might not understand exactly what it means, right? So they invested into something because they read an article or they talked to a family member or whatever, and then they invest into something and that goes down and they essentially don't know why they're in it, and then it's better to sell, right?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons.
We will dive into financials a little bit later.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned since last year you're doing what you're doing right now. What did you do before, and is there any relationship in what you're doing today?
Yeah, I'm educated as an engineer from the Danish Technical University here and been in that industry for a few years. And of course, that's been all good and interesting, but then the passion for investments kind of shone through that. And then I quit my job, and I think there are a lot of stuff that goes hand in hand with that, because as an engineer, you analyze a lot, you look at a lot of numbers, you build large Excel sheets. That was my case, at least, right? There are many different engineers. And that, of course, has a lot to do with investing in many cases, right? You need to analyze some And the analysis is different, but you look at a lot of numbers in any case, whether it's stocks or trends or what and you look at a lot of data or a lot of time, right? So there are a lot of similarities that makes it interesting. And then of course, from a more like a business point of view, building a business, building a product, like now I'm launching this bootcamp. I can also take on my education, of course. How do you build something from nothing? What is the process you go through? The business side of it is, of course, more difficult, right? But that's the challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, and I read on your LinkedIn, and I mentioned that to you in the call we had before this, is that you have tried a few things already, right, within your new business in terms on the product side. How was that process, and when did you basically decide, okay, this is a product that could work, or this is something that I feel no traction on, or this is too far away from what how did that go?
Yeah, so I think like almost any startup or entrepreneur, you go out and you try with some product that you have in mind, right? And for me, that was like this online course on investments, like a knowledge course. I talked to a few people before that, but not what I was supposed to, I guess. So that was the first course. And of course, no traction at all, because you can go on Udemy or whatever, and you can search stock course and you find the first 300, or you go on YouTube and you have the same amount of material. And then the second one was like a sheet, so like an Excel sheet where you can do your own portfolio. So a model, Excel model, which that's more niche, but again, it's the understanding, right, of what is the problem exactly, like when you go out to create something. And so I changed up the approach a little bit. And of course, you need to understand the problem, and I know that, but you have all these ideas in your head and you want to try them out. So I had a lot of meetings with people trying to understand like what is their key problem, their needs, and how do they want it solved, right? Is it an online course? Is it a boot camp? Is it a lot of YouTube videos? What is it that they want? Do they want to read? And so on. And the boot camp was really what seemed to resonate the most with people, because they want to invest, they have the money ready, but they need someone to push them a little bit forward and hold their hand through the process, because it can be quite intimidating. Of course, you're putting your money into something that you don't really understand. So it made sense as well that bootcamp, like a cohort based, where you're online and I'm there live and they have some tasks and all that, that made sense for most people. And so that's what I built. And that's also the first one that people actually signed up to, even though it's, of course, more a high ticket product than, say, an online course that you just put out.
Yeah, within you, because you said I talked with a lot of people. Did you ask them like, what were the questioning that you went through? Is it like, do you want a boot camp? Like, how did you come to those answers?
Yeah, so I think the key there is they need to explain everything for themselves, right? You cannot ask any leading questions. So it was to understand their situation the best way. So what is your current situation, right? Where are you with your investments? To understand, okay, I have some money ready. I tried to buy a stock, or I have a dad or a mom who is in the market or whatever, right? Try to understand like what is their relationship with it. And then I would ask, what is your main barrier for not getting started, right? Because we're having this call because they need some help. What is the barrier? And some people start to say knowledge barrier, or like they're afraid of it, if they're losing their money, or barrier of time, or whatever it might be, right? So you get an understanding of what is the problem, what is the barrier. And then basically I ask them, like, what do you imagine would help you the most? How do you like to get your knowledge? Is it through online course? Is it one-on-one? Is it cohort based? Is it YouTube videos? What is it? And then after that, when you have 15, 20 meetings, you start to see where stuff converge, right? So yeah, that's kind of approach.
Yeah, and those meetings, was that like coaching meetings, or was it just like where you just asked them, hey, do you want to jump on a call, and in return I will give you some financial advice? Like, what was the setup?
It was small 15, 20 meetings, people I found on LinkedIn that have either engaged with me or I reached out to them.
Okay, cool.
So it's not like I didn't try to gather people for, let's say, 20 meetings in 2 weeks. It came up over time. I just had the script that I would try to go through as best as possible, of course. All conversations naturally diverge, but yeah.
That's interesting. And do you still have your, because you had this course and this Excel sheet, do you still have that as products, or you shifted it completely away from that? Or are you selling it in the back end?
Yeah, the course is a little bit gone now because it's too easy to find information out there for knowledge. So it makes sense. But I can use a lot of the videos that I did for the bootcamp as extra material, right? So background knowledge. And then this portfolio sheet, which is the idea is that you create a virtual portfolio using ETFs. And we can maybe go into that if we have time. But either way, it's like an investment portfolio sheet. And I intend to use that also for the bootcamp so people can play around with, okay, how do I create a virtual portfolio before I create the real one, right? So they can see how does that affect their portfolio, what sectors can you be in, and all that. So I intend to use what I've created. Yeah.
Yeah, you're still using it just in a different way.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, and then because on your website, but also in your messaging, you're very focused on beginner investors. Is that like within that beginner investor target audience, is there a specific subsegment you go after, or is it beginner investors?
Yeah, right now there isn't, because I quit last year the job, and then I've built this now for 8-9 months ish, and I'm still trying to figure out who's the persona I'm trying to hit with this. And I think it's a balance, right? Because I put a lot of information out on LinkedIn every single morning, or I post every morning, and then who also resonates with what I am trying to tell, right? So it's also a bit of, I could choose, of course, who I want to hit, but there's also going to be some people that will resonate that I didn't expect. And that's like a balance. So for example, the bootcamp in August, I have 4 people signed up. 3 of them are women. And I did not expect that, right? Because I'm a guy, naturally I will attract more guys to it. And there are a lot fewer women in investment, unfortunately. But there's 3 women right out of the bat. And the calls that I've had has also been mostly with women, actually. So there's something in the material, the stuff that I do that attract women to follow me. So that's interesting. And then yeah.
And do you feel, because I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with, right? What is the audience to go after? You don't want to really create your product yet because usually it fails. So what do you feel is you should know a direction at least, and then within that direction, you should start creating content. But how do you feel? What is the right order of doing things in order to find that ideal customer profile or student profile?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a right order. I think it's the best way for me is to experiment with it, right? And to iterate a bit. So in the very beginning, I started out with internationals in Denmark, because then I could do the material in English. My fiance is an international as well, so she has a network that I can also tap into. But that came sort of niche, right? And then I tried to focus a bit more engineers because I come from an engineering background, so it made maybe sense that way. So I tried a bit of stuff, right? And recently I've been doing more going for the journey. So in terms of where people are in the investment journey, right? So they're right where they want to invest like soon, right? They have some money ready, they want to go for it, they just need the help. So they're in that part of the journey. So a little bit niche down into the journey, but of course I'm missing the persona somewhere, and I'm still trying to figure out who that is, but it will come through iterations, I guess.
Yeah, I guess looking at it like that is not a bad approach, right? Because basically niche it down. You don't really look at demographics, for example, but just people that they have already an interest. They probably have looked at a ton of resources on YouTube already, Udemy, probably have done some courses. Yeah. And now they feel that they are ready. They just want to pull the trigger. And with that, they use your bootcamp to get to that point. That's pretty targeted, I would say, without giving it like a demographic limitation.
Yeah. And of course, like there's also, just because I'm in Copenhagen, there's the time difference to the US, for example. It's just off, right? Then I do it in the evening. That would be their kind of 11 a.m. for lunch thing. That's weird. And of course, the same for the East, right? If I were to go India, China or something. So it's centered around Europe, of course, for the time difference. And because it's in English, I have So Denmark, of course, being the biggest market, I think, just because of LinkedIn algorithms and so forth. And then the UK is where I see people coming into my website.
Okay, interesting. Hey, and LinkedIn is of course the only real channel, right? Besides your website, like LinkedIn, you use to get out there and to share brand awareness. Like, why did you pick LinkedIn, and how is it working for you so far?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I actually started on Facebook. So I started as a Facebook group that people could request to join, and then I moved on to Instagram. Instagram was immediately not for me. I don't connect with Instagram. I don't connect with all these pictures. This mostly about the pictures, not so much about the text. And TikTok is video, right? More. And for me, I like to write, and I'm pretty good at it as well. And so I felt like LinkedIn was more a good starting point for me because I can write a lot, because it is based on text still a lot. Of course, it will hopefully change. So it will be more video and pictures as well. So I think LinkedIn was the third option, and it just resonated a lot better with me. And of course, you can argue, shouldn't you also be on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and all that? But I like to create some focus, and I honed in on LinkedIn then pretty early on, and it's been going pretty well for me. I like to post there every day. I don't have any problems with that. I like to write my stuff. And then I'm preparing for a second platform, which will probably be YouTube. So I'm testing for that. So I bought this microphone and the camera, and I have some light going on and stuff. And I'm starting to prepare for the YouTube channel instead of, Facebook and Instagram, TikTok.
Cool. Hey, and just to go a little bit more detailed on the LinkedIn part of things, what do you feel is the right, like, what are the 5 steps, the 6 step, the 7 step, the 8 step that made you reach the right people? Could you point that out? I know that a ton of people write about this on LinkedIn already, but maybe it's nice to hear what works for you, and also how much time you spend on this.
Yeah. So I would say what worked for me is to first share my story, right? Because I think it's quite an interesting story that me and my fiance quit our jobs last year, both of us, right? And went to her home country, Romania, for a while to then return to Denmark, and I started my business. That's a pretty good story. And I spent time on telling that first, which created an interest. And I think looking back, I should have probably done that more, like the storytelling part of it. So I would say 1, share who you are, right? Because you're going to be out there a lot naturally. And the more you share with yourself who you are, the more people will come as well. Because they go on my bootcamp, or they do a call with me because they see me, right? It's not just some random profile picture on LinkedIn. So I think share a bit who you are, pictures and stuff. And then I think it's trying to get comfortable with posting. So whether it's LinkedIn or wherever it are, or wherever it is, right? Like, get comfortable with posting slowly, like in your own tempo. I started, I think, 2-3 times a week, a little bit longer post. And you need to find your voice as well, right? So you look at these big profiles, and they have a certain style to their writing and to the videos and all that. But you need to create that style, and you need to create it from nothing. So you don't know how it looks before you just post a lot. And then creating the habit out of it is super important. If you want to post 2 times a week only, then you post 2 times a week, and you do that consistently. For me, I wanted to go up to every day. I'm not sure there's a good reason for that. It's just, I like the pace of it. And then the most important for me is to create that habit so I can post every single day. And sometimes I skip it, but yeah.
Do you automate anything, or is it?
I always do that. Yeah. So I use a tool called Buffer. So I always write my post the day before, and then before the weekend, I usually buffer 2-3 posts. But otherwise, I usually write the post just the day before. I don't schedule 20 posts ahead.
Yeah. So you can also be in because you write a ton about things that are happening in the news as well. Recently, yeah, exactly. I see a lot about Europe and what's going on in Russia and so on. Yeah. So I think that's a good approach. Do you post at certain times? Is there any tactic to that?
Yeah, certainly. So at the beginning, it was more all over the place. And now I'm very strict on 10 minutes past 7 in the morning, my time. And that's just every day, also in the weekend. And below every post, I even write, because there's going to be new people seeing it every day. I just write, I post about this, and this is the time that I post. So people know when to turn up and read it. So they know, the people that follow me, okay, if I go on LinkedIn 7:15, it's going to be there.
At 7.
At 7:10.
I guess you're focused on the early birds.
Yeah, exactly. You know, the ones that go up and then they go to the train and then they have a few minutes and they want to check what did Martin post this morning. And in the beginning, it didn't work, of course, because you have no audience, right? Sooner or later, you start to average higher and higher in terms of how many likes and impressions. And that just snowballs, right? Slowly.
And how much time did it take for you? And what are the metrics you look at because I guess likes is important because it will give you more reach. Engagement is important. Comments are important. But in the end, what drives, of course, the business is people that end up in your DMs or go to your website and sign up. So what do you look at, and how much time?
Yeah. So the time is less and less, even though I post more and more, right? So sometimes I do two posts a day as well, but I know more and more what to write about, how to do it, what is my own of how to write stuff. So I would say I spend 2-3 hours a day on writing plus LinkedIn plus communicating with people. So for example, I comment a lot under other people that are writing about finance as well. And I know when they're posting and all that. And then what's the other question?
The metrics. So what are you looking at in terms of, okay, you spend 2-3 hours a day in engagement and posting. That is for a lot of people, a lot of time, right? So it's but it's your main demand channel. What are the metrics you look at in terms of numbers and when you see something is successful for your business?
So of course the metrics is how many people go to my website. That's the main thing. And then from that as well, how many people write to me in the comments are pretty important, because that to me for the moment is an invitation that I can reach out to them as well. So there's like a level of engagement, right? You see the post, I get an impression. That's okay. Boring a little bit, right? They like it. Okay, that's good. If they comment, then if you actively want to comment to a post, you're more engaged as a person. And then I can reach out to them on the DM. So write a message like, hello, thank you for commenting. What is your passion? Or whatever the first question will be. And then we start a conversation and I can do a meeting. Of course it's with business in mind, for sure. And then there's also, of course, a value creation in mind, but that goes hand in hand, right? If I don't create the value, I cannot run a business, and the other way around.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, certainly website. And that's such a hard metric, because then you can hit it pretty well in a week and write some good posts, and then the website clicks go up, but you don't necessarily know exactly why, other than you wrote some good posts, but which one was it? And yeah, all that.
Yeah, and then after this, you're planning to go for YouTube, which is also way more a long-term game, right? Like I've seen some course creators that have built their YouTube channel from the scratch. There's of course a ton of financial already. So are you planning to do something? Because I guess if you just do the standard financial for beginner advice on YouTube, it will be hard to grab something of that few share. Are you planning to do something there to make it jump out, or what is your approach?
Yeah, I'm going to start as well on eToro, which is a trading platform where you can copy other investors. And I've been contacted by eToro to start up there with them. And I'm going to do that in August. And so the YouTube channel is also going to be mostly for that. So people who want to, of course, learn about, it's going to be, of course, for beginners, long-term investing, index/ETF investing. And then how do you do all that on eToro? And then if you want to copy me as a trader, you can do that then on eToro. So it's going to be focused on eToro users and driving people towards eToro, or my business, the bootcamp, and whatever will come in the future. But like you said, it's a very good point. There needs to be some kind of focus point, because there's so many people on YouTube. So yeah, eToro, long-term investment, and beginners.
Yeah, so you will be posting. I'm on eToro since a while. I love what they do. Also, there are a ton of people like you on there that share what their trades and what they see happening in the world, and then they link back to other things outside. So yeah. I think that matches a lot with what you do. All right. I think a lot of people, especially right now, and that's more from a customer perspective, right? A lot of people are very hesitant, I would say, and there's a lot of fear in the market right now. I guess there are things happening right now that have not really happened in the last 100 years. Of course, recessions are normal, market crashes are normal, but there's a ton of things happening between the world powers in the world. It's one of the things that I'm not sure how much of an understanding or how much you want to share about this, but do you feel that, let's say we come into a recession right now, and there will be a market crash, like the housing market will collapse, whatever will happen, what normally happens. Do you feel it's just a normal, if this is still a normal period, or do you feel that right now with everything that's happening between the world powers and geopolitics, and that we are in a different phase of this? Or do you think it's a regular market adjustment that is happening right now?
Yeah, that's a super good question. A hard question as well.
Yeah. I can imagine. I'm reading a book about it, so that's why I came up with it.
So, of course, it's a special situation, right? All recessions are special, but like you said, we haven't had a war in Europe since the World War II like this, right? So that situation is, of course, special and very sad one, obviously. And so I think there might be a case where it's going to be more the West, NATO, right, versus a bit the East. And that's going to be the big question for me. How much are Russia, China, India going to cozy up together, right? Because they're within proximity of each other geographically, right? And China is doing some pretty cool stuff in Africa in terms of infrastructure and all that. So they have that a deal going on. So that's special. That's new. That's a new kind of power that will have to be dealt with, hopefully just through economic levers instead of war. And then I think the normal situation is that we have a supply and demand issue in the world with a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff you still can't get, and there's a huge demand for it. And then we have inflation going up, which is, of course, the first time for many people, many young people. This is the first time it happened in their life, me included. But when you look through the data and the history, it's quite normal, and a recession might be coming up. Will it be a small one or a bigger one? It's important, but I think the question is more, will we get through it? Yes, like we always have. How long will it take? We don't know. So I think we have some normal cases, which is the inflation and the recession. And then we have the extreme case, which is India, Russia, China. How much do they end up cozying up together? That's the bigger threat. If you look a little bit further in that, I see Russia, Ukraine, horrible situation, but I don't see that it will escalate further than it does. So that's under control. That feels weird to say, right? Because it's, of course, still horrible. Yeah, I think that will be under control more. It seems like the two fronts, like NATO, Russia, have found the balance act a little bit. And now Russia is in the eastern Ukraine, and they are there now. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess a little bit more midterm, I guess maybe 10, 15, 20 years, what's happening in China and India. That's just something that's very hard to predict. Nobody really knows. But if, let's say, there will be, because over the last hundreds of years, apparently, I didn't know, but that's what this book describes. And I didn't fact check it, but I assume there's some truth in there, is that it all, like, world powers always come and go, right? So it's around 100 years. The US is now the world power since 45 plus minus, right? End of Second World War. And so that kind of means that it needs to end in the next 20 to 30 years.
Yeah.
And then there's a fair chance China will take over with this new block of countries. What would be the impact on the economy in the US of that? Because you can have world powers next to each other, right? That's happening right now. China is a very big economy where a lot of people are investing. So what can be, or what do you have any idea of the implications of that in long-term investors in mainly the US and the European markets?
So I think, so the world powers, if you look back, I think the book you're referring to is The Changing World Order. That's my guess. And of course, that's been through a lot of war, right? Like in the old times. And of course, also World War I and II. And that have led to the decline of these world powers pretty fast. And they disappeared after that, right? Like before the US, we had the British Empire, and that's now like roughly disappeared compared to what it was, right? I don't see that situation anymore as impactful because we're intertwined with everything we do. We're so globalized. We can do this call, right, even though we're very far apart and all that. So we're just too intertwined. The West has too much production in China. So I don't think the US is going to disappear completely as a superpower. Of course, it's going to be really bad for the US for a couple of years. The world order changes because then the reserve currency, like the currency that all countries trade in between each other, is going to be the Chinese one. But that changes, of course, everything in terms of relationships and trading and all that. So that's going to hurt the economy, the US economy. But other than that, I'm not into the details, but I just don't see that it will be a steep decline because we're so intertwined, globalized, urbanized, all that.
Yeah, I think the same way. Like everyone will be too impacted also on the China side if that happens.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks. I think there are two more things because now that part was mostly about the financial, was also some personal interest in your answer.
Yeah.
I think there are two things that will be interesting for today still to discuss is that your main challenges that you have seen over the years as a creator and how did you overcome them? And also any advice for other creators that are maybe thinking about creating their own education product or their own knowledge creators, or they know something that nobody knows and they want to share that knowledge. Could you share some of your thoughts around that?
Yeah. Okay. So challenges and advice. I think the biggest challenge is to
Of course, we talked a little bit about the financial parts of what you do and maybe the future, what will happen and what the impacts are for long-term investors. I would also love to hear, because of course, our audience is mostly like educators like yourself, course creators, coaches. So I would love to hear from you. What are the main challenges that you have seen so far in your journey? How did you overcome them? And also some friendly advice for other creators on their journey and what they can potentially learn from you to make some smart cuts or shortcuts.
Yeah. Okay. So I think the most challenging part for me has been on a personal level, right? Because I feel like you need to reinvent yourself when it's the first business you are creating. And especially for me, because I came from a full-time job, right, as an engineer, and then I quit it to start my company that's around investments. So that's two different networks and mindsets, everything. So I think the challenge has been on a personal one. How do I cope with that? How do I build up a network? How do I create trust? All that stuff, right? So you go through so many different things on a personal level, almost week to week when you build a company, and you learn a lot about yourself. And that's the biggest challenge, to keep up with that and keep thinking about what should I do next, and is this what I want to do, and how do I want to do it, and all that. I think if you're as a creator, if you start out and you have this big plan in your head and it's the first time you do it, I think you're going to find out pretty fast that it's going to just change 1,000 times. So I would say start small and figure out your way. I'm still in the beginning. I don't know how this looks in 3 months from now. I might find a business partner or like a big partnership with someone or whatever, right? A co-founder or something. So I would say be open to the challenges and just expect that there will be a lot of changes within yourself. And then, of course, now I'm alone. And I think in terms of business, and a lot of creators are on their own. It's very unusual to see like a two-man team on LinkedIn or YouTube or something, right? Most people are alone, and then when they get bigger, they then hire in people for editing or whatever it might be. And I think that's hard too. I'm a pretty social guy, and being on your own is hard. So you need some kind of help. Either I have an amazing fiance that's really helping me a lot with a lot of questions and support all the way through, right? And I have her support for everything that I want to do, even though we own a house and stuff. So have someone that can support you or help you. Be in an office. I have an office here where we live that I go to, that I'm part of. I pay it, or I pay for it, and that's helping me a lot to have some people around me that are also entrepreneurs, investors, whatever they do. Yeah, expect changes and expect that it takes time to find your own voice in it. And then I think the last thing is that you need to come from a different angle. You cannot just, like, that's what I thought about in the beginning. I'm just going to create an online course and then make money. Haha. That didn't work, of course. There are 300 courses on Udemy on investments. Of course, it's not going to work. But creating a bootcamp for it, I don't have. I've checked out the bootcamps that there are, and I can find 2-3 of them, maybe. They talk about different stuff and all that. So that's my angle a little bit now. And now I'm going to then add to it with YouTube and eToro, which other people are doing. Obviously, it's hard to be unique in this world. You need to do something. I come into the investment world with a cap and a white t-shirt and a shirt. That's also unusual. I'm not in my suit sitting here in the interview. So you need to find something from within that also who you are, basically, that has an edge.
Yeah. That is relatable. Yeah. Okay, that's cool. Hey, and are you working in a co-working space?
Yeah, so I just recently joined this new one here in my little hometown, and before that I was in a different one, a startup incubator in Copenhagen. So I'm not doing the work from home every day thing. I think a lot of creators, they can do that and they're okay doing that, and that's totally fine. Then I need to get out of the door 2-3 times a week to meet people and talk to people. Otherwise I'm not gonna make it.
Yeah, I'm the same. I think one more very interesting thing is that you have done this a while also next to your regular job, right? Or at least there was the start of this, you were still working, right? Or did you completely separate the two?
I actually more completely separated it. I had the idea for a while, also while working, that I wanted to help people get into investments, because it should be for everyone. And now there are investments that make it for everyone. But I didn't. It was my fiance that kind of pushed me and said, Martin, just quit your job so that you can do this that you've been talking about for so long. And I think mentally that helped me to quit the job. Of course, you need that kind of support then. I think if you're on your own then I think a side hustle first, like you have your job and then you can start creating stuff on the side would be beneficial. If I think back, if I started on LinkedIn writing about stocks as I just had my job and I could have written about investments and all that, that would have been so much better for me, because then you build up a base before you then end up quitting your job to do it, right? I started from absolute zero and had to create everything from the very beginning with no money coming in. But that was what I had to do. But I think many people can try to do the side hustle thing in the beginning.
Yeah, it's just the time thing is a real thing, right? You spend 2-3 hours a day on LinkedIn, for example, which is, of course, for most people with a job, impossible, right? Because that would just mean job, LinkedIn, sleep.
Yeah, you need to like it then.
Yeah, you really need to love it. Yeah, very true. Okay, cool. One more last one. How can people find you? And how can they engage with you, get in touch with you for partnerships or to hear more about the bootcamp or anything, other creators that want to learn about your journey? We will add it somewhere as well, but I would love to hear it from you as well.
Yeah, of course. So you can find me on my website, investwithmartin.com. And then if you want to write me an email, that's martin@investwithmartin.com. And then my name is very Danish, so I can say Martin Juul-Olsen, but I'm not sure people will find that on LinkedIn. So there'll have to be a link from your side. But I'm on LinkedIn every day, like I said. And I think the easiest is to write me a message in there, to find me in there. And hopefully now we're recording, so that will be soon enough. I will have my eToro account where people can copy my portfolio, and that would also be Invest with Martin, the handle.
The handle, okay.
Yeah, and the YouTube channel is also Invest with Martin. It's going to be
perfect.
I have it already. So Invest with Martin, and then you should be good.
Okay, I think this is easy to digest for most people that are watching this. So that should be good. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think it's always too short to go like super in depth, but we potentially can do another one in the future that is more
Yeah.
financial focused or the demand
Or when I have
focused.
a
But
big company. Yeah. So you can ask
yeah,
all the
yes,
questions. How did you get to there?
yeah. I think that's a good idea, but it was very interesting, and I think a lot of people will learn from it. So thank you for that, and have a great one. And I'm looking forward to your post tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me as well, Manno. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for being here. I talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.